Back on Monday, we brought you the devastating story of two Australian couples, both using surrogates to conceive and both separated from their newborns when COVID-19 struck. These are Australian babies overseas, alone and stateless.
Their hardships resonated with many of you, and as we discovered, they're not the only ones in the same heartbreaking situation.
Yeah, lovely, cute.
Rez and Noran Zalman's story tugged on the heartstrings.
And we see the videos and the photos many times every day we got from them.
Unfortunately, we can't get a direct flight into.
So too did Tennille and Rob Fellows, who are racing against the clock to make it to Ukraine by June for the birth of their child.
That first moment when he's born, I must be there.
Their stories triggered an outpouring of support on social media and encouraged other couples to come forward, like Tanya Langdon and husband Tristan Martin, whose biological baby will be born on the other side of the world on the 11th of June.
They say the baby can stay, our baby Charlie can be in a hospital for 14 days, and after that we haven't confirmed what happens.
So we don't know where she'll go. We need to be there.
According to Growing Families, there are currently 9 newborn Australian babies in Georgia. In Ukraine, there are 17. Tanya and Tristan must wait on approval to leave Australia. Once, or if they get the green light, they will fly to Amsterdam. Then it's a waiting game. Tickets to Georgia go on sale at 6 o'clock the day of the flight. If they manage to snap one up, they can attempt to board, but there's every possibility the airline will say no.
We need the assistance of the government to do that. We need someone to be our voice. We feel like we can't speak at all.
The Department of Foreign Affairs says obtaining visas and entry approval to some countries is also more complex and time-consuming due to COVID-19 control measures. Australian intended parents will need to factor these issues into their planning around births. But there's not time left to plan. This baby is coming whether COVID-19 is in the world or not.
Yeah, until she's in my arms, I don't know she's real.
Oh, I mean, it breaks your heart, doesn't it? And we're joined now by Sam Everingham, who's the Director of Surrogacy Support Group Growing Families, who's been liaising with all of the Australian families. Sam, I mean, you just look at that. I mean, we're talking about these couples' biological children and they can't get to them. How dire is the situation?
Oh, look, it's pretty tough. We've got 60 families right now affected in the next 3 months with babies they're struggling to get to. These families have got to get visas, they've got to get permission to travel from Australia, they've got to get permission to enter these other countries, they've got to find flights that can take them there. And for some of these countries, that's a really tough gig to do it, and they can't do it without support. We're doing the best we can to support them. Qatar is doing a bit of work with us as well, but some of these issues are really tough to solve. And I feel for these families. We've got some of these kids who've been overseas without their parents for 5-6 weeks now.
Oh, Sam, you know, some of these cases you're hearing that the babies are in hospital for 14 days and then we just don't know what happens to them. So what happens to these babies if their parents can't get to them?
Well, look, we will be able to get their parents over there, just a matter of when. In the meantime, the agencies have put in interim arrangements where there'll be nannies who look after these kids, but these are total strangers who are looking after these newborns. I mean, for the parents, it's, you know, it's not really acceptable. It's something they're having to put up with because it's all there is. But the agencies are doing the best they can do under the circumstances until we can get those parents there.
And we've been hearing from these parents sort of throughout the whole week, I mean, and their stories, I mean, they're just heartbreaking in that most of them have gone through IVF and now they've, you know, they've gone through this surrogacy program. They're so close to getting these babies that they've wished so desperately for years, sometimes more than a decade. You've got the 17 newborn Australian babies in Ukraine. So the situation there, how is it for people getting in there? And we believe it's even more difficult if you're trying to get into Georgia.
Look, we've actually got, I think, only 7 newborns right now in Ukraine. For Ukraine, it's particularly difficult. Usually it's quite easy to get in via Kiev, but Ukraine airspace is closed down right now, which means we've got to get those couples into our neighbouring country called Belarus, which then means a hazardous land crossing for 7 hours across the Belarus border with drivers, a lot of paperwork. It's extremely anxious process for parents. It's being done off their own back. There's no real oversight of how it's working. Parents having to walk with luggage across 1 kilometre border crossings. It's really tough.
So, Sam, what can our government do to help these families get to their babies?
Look, we need to do a lot more work to try and help get these families onto these repatriation flights that are coming in into Tbilisi, into Kiev in Ukraine from other European capitals. We can get those families to Europe, but we can't get them onto these repatriation flights without the help from the Australian government. We need that kind of help. We also need them to help with getting those citizenship and passports for the kids coming home. Getting those things quickly is a good thing. We don't want these kids stuck over there for many months with their parents.
Yeah, all right, Sam. I mean, it is such a difficult situation. I mean, no one could have predicted that a pandemic would hit and a situation like this would arise. I have actually just got news through from Tanya and Tristan, who we heard from in their story, that overnight Border Force has given them approval to leave the country. So that is one step in the right direction. They're still far from getting to Georgia for the birth of their baby girl, but it's a very important step. So, I mean, they thank the government for everything that they are doing. They do need more help. Sam, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.